Welcome to Reformgelical, where the Reformed and Evangelicals meet. Jerome, welcome. You are the first live member to join. Appreciate you supporting us. My name is Matt Williams. My co-host is AD Robles. And we are excited for you guys to be here, for you guys to listen. Now we're going to start doing a little better job of like showing the intro or talking to you about what's going on in our format, because we actually figured it out. So we are going to be doing the show live at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time every Wednesday. And if you want to come participate like Jerome is, and our good and loyal fan Liam and others, you can go become a member at Patreon. For the next 2 weeks, you will be able to join for $2 a month, and you'll get free access to our digital studio. I call it, or what did I call it? Yeah, digital studio works. And then after that, it's going to go up to $5 a month. And then if you want to just subscribe after that for $2, you can still see the show early before it's released on Fridays, which will be on our YouTube channel. And then I'm also working on getting it for audio only on the audio stuff, but I'm having trouble with iTunes like everybody does always. Apparently it's the same with podcasts that it is with apps. It's really difficult to get things approved with Apple.
Yeah, everything's difficult with Apple.
Yeah. So, and also throughout the week, if once a week is not enough to hear us or watch us, you could find us on our social media sites. And we also have YouTube channels as well. AD, do you want to share how people can get a hold of you and watch you?
Yeah, you could just, in the search bar on YouTube, just type in AD Robles, Robles, and you'll find my channel. It's called AD. But if you just type in AD, you'll find a bunch of other stuff that has nothing to do with me. So AD Robles.
Mm-hmm. And then on Twitter, it's real AD Robles, right?
Yeah, that's right. Real AD Robles. But I haven't been tweeting that much lately, although I'm not canceling it, but just don't expect a lot of stuff.
Are you on Facebook or anywhere else that you want people to find you, or is it just YouTube?
AD Robles. You could find me on anything as long as you type in AD Robles. It should be fine.
All right, great. And my YouTube channel is, I don't even know what it is. I still haven't got enough subscribers to change my link. But if you look how to build a tent, you're going to scroll through a bunch of people building tents, and then you'll find my show.
Are there really people building tents?
Yeah, there are. There's everything on YouTube.
It's pretty awesome. I actually kind of like YouTube.
Yeah, it's great. I like it, except for the whole censorship thing. You can email me, Matt, at howtobuildatent.com. A lot of my tent building audience emails me a lot about business and economic advice, political advice. So I love hearing from you guys. And then also just on the social media sites, how to build a tent, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Love to hear from you. Love to get you guys to follow us and support us. All the subscriptions, the shares, the likes of this show and our other shows is a huge support for us. It like really helps us get the word out. It helps build advertising for us and all that stuff. So I'd really appreciate you guys considering that, and then being a patron as well. Okay, so we got the intro done. I wanted to give myself a pat on the back. Yesterday, I love doing that. I actually made it through the Democrat debate. Did you watch it, AD?
No,
you didn't watch it.
No, you know, I when you asked me if I was going to, I wanted to, but then I'm on a board of a nonprofit, and I forgot that our meeting was yesterday.
Oh,
so
okay.
I had to go to that.
I wasn't sure if it was like just along the lines of I'm not voting, and I'm not going to even watch it if I'm not voting.
Well, I mean, it is hard to watch that stuff, but since you were going to, I figured I should. But then I couldn't.
Yeah, it was painful, and I like live tweet it, just making jokes, like not really serious comments, or I'll just point out the absurdity of them, because seriously, it is all trash for the most part. I mean, it's all basically racism, sexism, income inequality. Trump is a KKK member, and I'm going to top you in just some kind of category, one of those categories.
These things, they call them debates, but they're never really debates. It's just like two people, and they talk to each other a little bit, but they're giving their own speeches. They're never interacting at all, really.
Yeah, definitely. And climate change, Jerome.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. That's right.
Yeah, who can be the most crazy is really what it's a speech. Each person gives a speech of who could be crazier.
It seriously is, and it's crazy. Like the people that are like on the left don't even seem radical; they seem moderate, and it's the socialists that are just driving the party all the way over. But one of the things I just wanted to bring up, I didn't want to just, brag that I made it through the whole 3-hour event, which on a side note, CNN's audio and production is terrible. It started, they didn't introduce the candidates, and then they just had music playing, and there was an awkward silence. And then they cut to a commercial without saying anything. And then they went back to David Axelrod, the commentator. And then it went back to the contestants, and what are they? I was going to say nominees, the people.
They are contestants.
They are.
They're contestants.
Yeah. But the one thing that was really actually interesting to me, and I think is going to be meaningful going forward, is that they kind of pivoted, all of them, with the same word on abortion. Because I've grown up with Roe versus Wade, and I've heard the phrase, it's the law of the land, right? You just must accept it. It's the law of the land. And even though it's not, the Supreme Court can't write laws, but that is what we've been told to swallow and just accept. Right. But the word that at least 6 of them used last night was, we need to codify Roe versus Wade. Almost an admitting that it isn't the law of the land.
That's right.
And I found that so fascinating, because I have never heard that once from any Democrat politician. It was enough that the Supreme Court did it. And I started thinking about why. And I think they're really nervous about Trump appointing another Supreme Court nominee where it's going to be overturned. And I think that's the play.
Well, I don't know whether they're really nervous about that or not, but at the end of the day, the Democrats understand something that I think a lot of conservatives don't, and that is it's all about the language, right? So you control the language, you can control how people think. This is straight from the book 1984. It was all about, the party in the book of 1984 is a socialist party, and they knew that all you had to do was control how people talk. And if you control how people talk, then when they think, they can only think in certain categories and certain terms. And so all of a sudden, hey, it's the law of the land. And that's kind of what they've been saying. It's a drumbeat. I've heard that ever since I was a kid, just like you. Mm-hmm. But you're right. This whole thing about codifying, right? The fact that they're all saying the same thing, that's not accidental. This is strategic. And they're all saying this and codifying. That sounds so official, right? It sounds so permanent. Mm-hmm. And I think that whether or not they're nervous about it actually being overturned, they do want to add a layer of permanence to it that they might feel threatened with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And they might even just be doing it to stir up the base and try to get more momentum, because they really don't have much. Let's be honest.
Yeah, baby killing and homosexuality.
The world's going to end in 19 years, and we need to make sure white people aren't in power when it does.
Yeah, well, it's funny that you say that, because when you have a worldview that basically says, "Hey, look, it's all over within 20 years," what else do you got? I mean, I guess kill as many babies as you can, and homosexuality. I mean, what else is there? Eat and drink, be merry, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. But the thing that I really started thinking about and marinating, because I couldn't just go to bed after that. 3 hours of listening to nonsense, your brain has to kind of wind down a little bit. But I was just thinking, man, how much of cowards has the Republican Party and the conservatives been for so long, that we are just kind of we conceded the battle of the slaughter of children, and here they are admitting that it's not law, and there needs to be some kind of more official element to it. And we all along could have called their bluff and done something about it. And I was thinking, not only are our leaders a bunch of cowards for not fighting, but us who follow and vote them in continually are a bunch of fools. And I'm saying that as myself. I have been a fool. I have been a coward. I am not saying that I have not done these things, but it's time that we just grow a pair and we start educating ourselves and praying for wisdom from God, because we have been taken for a ride on this.
Yeah, no, definitely. I don't think anyone would deny that, if you ask a run-of-the-mill conservative, Republican, whether or not, it would be possible to outlaw abortion, I'm not sure that many would say it's even possible. I mean, it's just the law of the land. Everyone has gone along with that. I mean, it's settled law. That's another thing. That's another one. Settled law. A lot of people say that. Settled law, law of the land, that kind of thing. And it's not, like you said, I mean, you can't say it any better. It's actually not. But most of us believe that it actually is. And even those of us who don't believe it actually is, don't actually think we could actually change it. You know what I mean? So they've got us. I mean, they've got us thinking on their terms, and we need to stop.
Yeah, we need to stop like just accepting their status quo. And I even started doing that on Twitter, tweeting about this stuff. And I was like, don't you want justice for these babies? I'm starting to just trying to throw back their words back at themselves. Like, you don't want justice? You're not for justice?
Systemic justice, too.
Systemic justice. Yes, this is systemic oppression. This is systemic racism. Who is the people getting aborted? It's Black babies. It's minorities in cities. Like, don't you want to overthrow this? Don't you want to take these systems down? And they don't know what to say. They're almost scared. And it kind of ties into something else I wanted to talk about in our notes. And I kind of put it at the end, but I want to talk about it now. And it's kind of an old story. It died away because I think it turned out to be a hoax. AOC's event where somebody came and she was saying that we need to start eating babies to save the climate or save the environment, or we're going to die. We need to start eating babies. And it was disturbing what AOC, not knowing it was a prank, obviously, like how she handled it. I don't know how much better you would have handled it, I guess. I mean, besides like straight up saying that's insane, but she doesn't have a biblical foundation. But I was thinking we need to start running those plays more. We need to start like making them figure out a dividing line, or make them make a call on what's right and wrong, because they don't have a worldview. They don't have a foundation or a moral system where they can make these determinations. Well, it's funny. How is she supposed to determine that?
Right. Jerome in the comment section here is saying she didn't openly rebuke the idea. And honestly, like a person like AOC, and again, listen, she's my Boricua sister. I don't think she's pure evil. she might be a little bit spicy and all that, but she's not pure evil, I don't think. But a woman like her, she honestly she's didn't know what to think about that. Should she be on the side of eating babies or not? I don't think she really knows at the time anyway. Now that she looks back on it, and it was funny. I don't know if you guys saw how she tried to spin it, but she tried to spin it like, don't make fun of her. Like, she could have had mental illness and all that kind of stuff. Just like, so she found a way to turn it into social justice, whatever. But at the time, she's like, I'm sure if this is what she's probably doing, she's probably licking her finger, seeing which way the wind is. What do I have to believe about this one? You know what I mean? She didn't know because she had no foundation. Any person with a biblical foundation would be like, are you out of your mind? Obviously that's crazy. But she honestly didn't Jerome is right on here. She didn't openly rebuke the idea because I don't think she knew that she could.
Right.
Even though you could tell she kind of knew like this is a little nuts, but she didn't know what to believe about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this really was a great example for us to use, a great case study to use against the left, is we need to start being as absurd as possible to them. And pointing out, like, if you do not have any kind of foundation or moral, like, values, what are you going to do? You can't govern. You can't have a society. And we need to just keep making them be put in these positions. I would love for somebody in every town hall to do this to every candidate, to every politician, because they're going to be stuck. Because how are they not going to, correct that and not be called a bigot or a hater or, sexist, whatever it is?
Well, yeah. I mean, this is an absolutely, you're correct. This is a play you need to run every time. Make them be consistent. And actually, my brother and I have a phrase for describing exactly this kind of strategy that I can't say on TV because I'm a Christian, but but it's a biblical thing. This is Proverbs, man. This is Proverbs 26, where it says, answer a fool according to his folly. So what this is saying is, answer him in as stupid a way as he's answering you. And there was actually a politician who did this. I don't know if you guys, I might get some of the details here wrong, but there was a politician, a Republican guy. you don't ever see this on the Republican side, but good on this guy. I don't remember who it was. It was like a representative, not a nationally known guy. Mm-hmm. But anyway, they were talking about adding, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 genders to the official state registry of genders, right? So when you get a license for whatever state it was, male, female, X, whatever it is, there was like 5 of them they wanted to add. So what he did was like, guys, like, this is a matter of justice. And not only do we need to add these 5, but we need to add these as well. And he just kept adding. He just kept going. He just kept going. And eventually the Democratic person had to stop him because he was just kept going. He was basically filibustering is what he was doing. Uh-huh. But he was basically answering a fool according to their follow. They couldn't stop him on any moral grounds because there's an infinite number of genders, right? That's what he was basically telling them. And they had to stop him. And that was fantastic. That's the kind of play we need to run. Make them look as foolish as they actually are. There was another guy who did this. There was a guy on the floor of the house that put up a picture of tauntauns. Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
This is on AOC as well. Okay, this was a debate about AOC's Green New Deal. And he was saying how not only do we need to get rid of airplanes because of the fossil fuels, we get rid of cars, but what we need to do is start traveling by tauntaun.
Wasn't that what's his name from Utah? Wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't remember who it was, but it was awesome though.
Yeah, that was great. Like, that's what we need to do, especially because we know the end of this game. They're going to eat their own and destroy themselves because they're always going to have to be topping each other and who's the bigger victim, and they're going to run out of victims and they're going to be cannibalizing themselves. And the more we can do that verse, I love that verse because that verse like means so much more now when you can apply it to politics. Answering a fool to
there's a lot of folly there.
But if we could continue to run these plays and make a fool of them, it's just going to create a faster cycle of it being destroyed and just hopefully coming back to rationality of some sort,
right. And that's the thing. One of the things about evangelism from a reform perspective anyway is, we don't go out there saying God has a wonderful plan for all of your lives, like that's okay to say that, I guess, depending on the context. But a lot of what reformed evangelism is all about is basically taking someone, bringing them to the cliff and saying, this is it. There's nothing else. You can jump over this cliff or not. And then you don't push them over the cliff. You offer them the solution. You know what I mean? Like, you basically take them to the end of themselves and take them to the precipice and then say, look, Christ is the answer here. Like, you don't leave them there, but you take them there and show them that it's just foolishness all the way down unless you go with Christ. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Anyway, I didn't mean to bring reformdom into this, but hey, this is called Reformgelical, right?
I know, that's your role. That's your job. All right, I think that's a great segue into. I want to talk about this reparations comment we had on your YouTube channel.
Oh no!
Hey, you said you wanted to talk about it today.
I did.
You did. But before we do that, I'm going to give the AD some time to think about this. I did put 2 poll questions in the show for those of you who are listening live. If you want to answer those, is what do you consider yourself? Are you a Reformed Presby, Reformed Baptist, Evangelical, or other? And then just some other. I see people already answered this. Is great. What type of topics would you like us to discuss on future shows? Theology, politics, culture, all of the above. So it just gives us some good.
Nice.
So just good, data to work with. All right. So can you give us a little just like foundation of what the show was? It was about Tabidi talking about reparations.
Yeah. So Thabiti Anyabwili, he's a Gospel Coalition writer and definitely on the social justice side of the issues that I like to talk about on my YouTube channel. He has made an argument in the past for slavery reparations, and he made one recently, which basically said that there's something that Israel received from, I think it was King Darius in the Old Testament, the book of Ezra, that's kind of similar to reparations. It was basically an injustice that was done in the past, and King Darius decided to pay for that injustice. I'm kind of simplifying it, but pay for that injustice in the present even though the people in the present had nothing to do with it. And so he's saying, look, and in the Bible, it explicitly says that God inspired him to do this. So the argument was that, God's inspired this in the past, therefore it can't be unjust, and therefore stop arguing, basically, is what the argument is.
Got it. And it's just that I'm Googling the definition so we're all on the same page. The reparations is the making the amends for a wrong that has been done by paying money to or otherwise helping those who have been wronged. Do you agree with that definition?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I think, in our context today, what we're basically talking about is, just to flesh it out, is basically paying the descendants of slaves some kind of compensation, whether it's money, whether it's a tax write-off, whether it's land, something, because of the fact of their ancestors being enslaved and basically stolen from, is what it was. When you're enslaved, you're stolen from. Your property is stolen. Your labor is stolen without much recompense. And so the idea is that that's a wrong, that's an injustice, and so we should pay for that today. That's what we're talking about today.
Okay. And, maybe it's just me in my evangelical ways that kind of stays towards the New Testament. And I used to. Now I know I've wised up and started reading more of the Old Testament.
Good idea.
Good idea.
It's like 3/4 of the Bible, so you might as well give it a once over, right?
I was doing really good at reading the Bible in a year, and then I realized I had to read the Old Testament too. And then it took me a lot longer. No, I'm just kidding. I've been there. So I was saying basically, like, I don't think I've ever seen anywhere in the Bible that says that there was reparations or that God ordained it. And then you said, well, they did plunder Egypt.
Yes.
They were told to plunder Egypt.
Yes.
You said God enabled the Jews to plunder the Egyptians. Definitely. And my question to that I just saved to this, and maybe you can elaborate on that more and answer my question is that really reparations, or was that just them plundering a nation? Like, isn't there a distinction between plundering and reparations?
Oh yeah, there's definitely a distinction. So what I was saying there was basically what happened with Egypt and the Israelites. The Israelites were enslaved in Egypt, and then God saves them. Moses comes, says, let my people go. There's plagues, and then eventually they leave. And not only do they leave, but they basically ask the Egyptians for cash. And God basically, listen, if put it this way, if you had enslaved a people for years, and then they, your firstborn dies because of them, there's blood in the land, there's flies, there's a plague of frogs and stuff, and then they come to you and say, hey, we're leaving, give us some money too. Like, you probably wouldn't just hand it over.
Right.
Or maybe you would out of fear. I don't know. But whatever the reason is, God makes them give money to them. And that's not really reparations, but it really is, God did that to basically bless his people. And it was, kind of a recompense a little bit for what they endured. But it's definitely different. I was just trying to be like, kind of cheeky, spicy, I guess you could say. Spicy, I guess. I don't know.
So reparations aren't biblical, correct?
I don't think so. So here's the idea. So reparations, it's based on the idea of restitution, and that's actually very biblical. So in the Bible, if you were to steal, $10 from me, and you were caught, and there was witnesses that said, yeah, this guy stole $10 from you. You wouldn't go to jail. You wouldn't get beaten. You wouldn't get your hand chopped off. None of that. In the Bible, basically what you do is you have to give me my $10 back. And then you also have to give me extra for a penalty, in other words. And it depends. So if you steal $10, it's not that much. So the penalty won't be that much. But if you stole like hundreds of thousands of dollars, the penalty would be much more. Anyway, that's restitution. You make up for what you stole. That's a very biblical idea. And that's the foundation, I think, of biblical justice. And reparations is a form of restitution. So there's a form of reparations that could be biblical. Okay. But the problem is that the people who committed the crime of slavery, stealing people from Africa, bringing them over in the slave trade, whatever else they did, beating them, whatever else they did, those people have been dead a long time, a very, very long time. And the Bible explicitly says that sons don't pay for the sins of their fathers. In no uncertain terms, it's very clear the Bible says that's not something that you can do. So if my dad were to have committed a crime of some kind, you can't charge me with that crime. Obviously, that for Americans that seems obvious, right? But this is not obvious. This is something that the Bible had to say, because back in the day, your whole family could be executed if the father did a crime.
Yeah,
and God wanted common. That was very common. So this seems good to us only because we've been brought up in this country that, is in many ways is built on the foundation of Christianity. This is I don't know if this was completely unheard of, but it's a biblical, godly principle that the person who does the crime does the time. Yeah. So with reparations, it's impossible to do that. So whoever's paying for this is someone who didn't do the crime.
Right. And what kind of strikes me about it is when we talk about these things in the Old Testament, it's a way of establishing or, applying justice and holding people that have wronged people accountable and making them pay. And I guess restoring too. But it's interesting here is like you said, who are we saying that needs to be held accountable? It seems to me it's more of we just need to help an oppressed class. It's not so much more about justice. It's more of a victim mentality. And I mean, we can talk about how the government should apply justice going forward, but I don't feel like that's really the topic or the motive behind this. I feel it's more like we need to just wealth redistribution. It's more like a healthcare argument to me. Like, oh, we need to provide healthcare for everyone because it's the moral thing to do. We need to provide reparations for people that have been oppressed because it's the moral thing to do. It has nothing to do with justice. It just seems to me that's like the label put to it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that some people would make the argument that it's something to do with justice, but I agree with you, Matt, that at the end of the day, it really isn't about that, because at the end of the day, I might stand to collect reparations because I've got 20% of my ancestry was African slave, right? So, I would stand to collect that, but I've never been enslaved. You know what I mean? I've never been oppressed in a way that I'm owed restitution. So it can't be about justice, because if it was about justice, then you need to find someone who was stolen from, someone who was actively oppressed. And I might be able to collect reparations if it ever happened. And clearly I was not oppressed. I mean, my biggest problem when I was a kid was that my parents couldn't afford to put me in ice hockey. You know what I mean? Like,
that's bad.
I had all these. I lived in a neighborhood where I had a lot of kids that were a lot more well off than me, and they all played ice hockey. I wanted to play ice hockey, and we couldn't afford it. That was my biggest problem as a kid. Now I'm kind of simplifying. Obviously, I've had bigger problems than that, but you see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
Listen, I saw a meme that said this. I can't take credit for this, but like, if you're in a country where like people like on a political debate stage are really fighting for the right to like have your pronouns be like enforced by law, like if that's your country, there's a good chance you have never been oppressed in any meaningful sense, because that is so low on the priority list. You know what I mean?
I know. Like,
you cannot with a straight face be like, yeah, there's a ton of oppression here, by the way, he, hers. You know what I mean? Like, that's not. I didn't have a degree in psychology, but that's pretty low on Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. Could you just imagine like the Chinese Christians coming over here and trying to hear about some of the oppression
embarrassing
we have? I know, it really is kind of embarrassing.
Have you ever been overseas, like on one of those like short-term mission trips type things?
No, I've only been down to
You've never done it?
Yeah.
You've never done it? Yeah. So like, I mean, I've done that kind of thing, and you get only a small sense of what's going on other places. But like, I've been to like Ethiopia and El Salvador, and it's like the Christians there with like the problems that we discuss and like fight about, like,
I know. It's terrible.
Like, are you serious? Not to say that they're not like automatically better than us, but it's just like it puts things into perspective a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So another thing that I wanted to talk about that was kind of interesting, kind of about justice too, is our friend Marcus Pittman is very vocal about not having a police force.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know what your opinion is on this, but I find this kind of interesting in a way I've never heard it before. I've never heard of not having a police force. And it was funny. My mother-in-law was asking me today, like, oh, so what are you guys going to talk about today? And I was just said a few things that were like she would expect. And I said, oh yeah, and abolishing the police force. And she looked back and she was so perplexed. Like, what are you talking about on this show? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I do. I would say, and I don't want to speak for Marcus, but I think I can sort of, because I don't know that he would necessarily want to say that there could be no police, but he would want to abolish socialist police forces. And what that essentially means is police forces that you and I are forced to pay for through taxation. So that doesn't mean that you can't have security. Like I always think about, this might've been Kanye, man. Kanye is like the ultimate rock star. Like he does things and everyone's always talking about, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Kanye, back when there was like fires in California, he like spent a ton of money on like private, like essentially private, like firefighters for his house.
For his house.
This could be, I don't know if I've got this story right. I'm not like big on pop culture, but somebody did this and people were criticizing him because like a lot of people lost their houses and he had the money to like protect his house with like privatized firefighters. And it's like, what that proves though, is that there could be a system that you don't have to have a socialized fire department. You could actually pay for a fire service to protect your house. So I don't think that, I don't know about abolishing like security, like saying that there could be no security or no police. But as far as, government police, I think that biblically that's problematic in a number of ways. Number one, you couldn't fund it. Because the Bible wouldn't allow for that kind of funding. But anyway, yeah, that's what I would say.
And you say that the Bible doesn't allow for it is because of the cap of 10% of our taxes? Or is there another reason that you say?
Yeah, I think that the Bible's, the authority that the Bible gives the government to collect taxes is a very small amount that everyone could pay. Even the poorest person, it's basically a head tax. And it's so small that the government wouldn't have enough money to have a police force. And so the police force, in a government, because you have to have a police force. Like, in other words, the fact of life is that people need to police, others because people are evil. So you can't just not have one, but essentially it would be either volunteer or it would be privatized or it would be just, citizens looking out for each other kind of thing. But this whole idea of a government subsidized police force is problematic biblically because you can never fund it. And there's other reasons too, but yeah.
And even if it may be another option would just not have it be the primary like enforcement. And just have like it be a response or if there's an escalated event. But I was thinking about this too, and thinking about my mother-in-law's face in shock. Not that I'm picking on her, but I think a lot of people would have that same reaction because we have this false sense of security that since we have a police force, everything is going to be like law and order. Everything is going to be safe and okay. And that's a little troublesome to me. It's like we shouldn't be just thinking that we're safe and okay because of a police force.
Yeah.
We should be taking ownership and trusting in God to protect us, but also like talking about the spheres of authority again, that we need to be arming ourselves, or I guess I shouldn't say that, but we should be taking precautions and learning and knowing how we're going to defend our family and who we're responsible for too, and not just trusting it to the government. There's too much of this trusting it to the government.
Right.
And that kind of struck me with thinking about what Marcus was saying.
Well, and at the end of the day, like this might sound crazy to a lot of people who listen to us here, but if you live in a rural area, this, like sometimes you don't have a police force. Like even now, like we don't necessarily have police everywhere. So like I've had friends that, they've had an issue with, a drunk person coming to their house in the middle of nowhere and they call 911. They're like, oh yeah, well, we've got a state trooper on duty for this region. He can be there like in an hour and a half. And it's like, okay, so what do I do? Well, good luck. You know what I mean? Like, I hope you're protected, like, But the thing is though, like, it's always interesting because like when people talk about like being so shocked, like there would be no public school or no police force, like these are things that we didn't always have. And, you know, we had crime, of course, we had issues, but you can get by without these things. And,
Right.
and so I'm not anti-police. I think I would prefer a place where to live in a place where there was some kind of protection. But I think that it's not how do I say this? It's not self-evident to me that a government socialized police force is automatically better and more reliable than a private police force. I don't think that that's necessarily true at all. I think there should be competition when it comes to security and police forces. And I don't think it takes too much imagination to imagine a system where that could work, in my opinion. So it's a little different. But, you know, I was talking to my brother about this too. Like, things that we're not used to, we're automatically scared of. We're automatically nervous about. We're not used to not having, you know, government police force. I think it could work very well and probably would work a lot better.
It would probably work a lot. Yeah, it'd probably work a lot better in this sense that we could hold them accountable a lot easier instead of them being part of the government and having the government go against the government and then having this public union that's defending the government against the government. If these are private companies and we could actually use the government in their rightful place of using the sword and holding them accountable and holding them to justice. And, but to your point of just not being comfortable with the unfamiliar and something new, Brexit is like the perfect example of this. Has sometimes like it really turns into a firestorm on Twitter when I start making fun of the English and the British people for breaking off from Europe. They're like so frightened that the world is going to end because they are no longer part of the European Union, which they haven't been part of the EU for a long time. It's like, hey guys, we did it 250 years ago and we are now the superpower in the world. It could work out for you guys. You don't need to be scared. And I feel like we have those same responses when we say things like, yeah, what if we had a privatized police force? Or what if we didn't have prisons anymore? And that's an interesting one I want to get to. Before we get into that, though, I see some questions that were asked. But I really want to talk about this prison ones because I think this one actually has some traction from more than just us crazy conservatives, but on the left, too. Yeah. A place where we can find some commonality. Are you guys going to have theme music? I don't know. I'd kind of like it not having theme music. I don't know, what do you think about that, AD? I haven't talked about it.
Yeah. Maybe. We'll see.
Maybe. And then I see, are we going to conferences? We're not going to ReformCon. I'm going to G3. I'm trying to get AD to go because we're going to
I think I'm going to. I haven't
great.
made a decision, but I think I will be there.
Good, because we're going to have a lot of roundtables with the Fight Laugh Feast guys, so that's going to be fun. And then I'm going to the Founders Ministry Conference for the release of that Founders Ministry video.
Oh man,
yeah,
there's so much anticipation.
Oh my gosh, David just sent me a 10-minute clip of it, and it is really good.
Is it for real?
It is. It's like because David does a really good job of creating a story from all the different scenes. Instead, so it's not just like isolated scenes talking about different things, but it actually takes you along a story, and it's really great. And plus, you know, everyone gets mad at it, and I love controversy. I'm addicted to fighting now. I was telling David, David, I want to be in a battle every single day.
What's funny is you might not believe this, but I actually don't like controversy.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Yeah. Those are the people God usually uses the most in controversy. I'm never going to get into a battle. No one's going to want to think I'm worth it. And I'm just going to be wanting to fight, and it's not going to happen for me. But you, Mr. Humble guy, you're going to get all the action.
Oh, man.
All right. So let's get back to something worth talking about.
I was watching a video. This is a weird thing for me to say, but I was watching a video the other day about this guy. He's a comedian. And he was talking about the flat Earth conspiracy theory, and he's talking about it and stuff. And you can tell he's about to become a flat earther, but he doesn't want to. And it's just so funny to see his internal struggle. You can see the moment when his brain breaks, and he's just like, clearly the world is a spinning ball whizzing through space, and you can just see him struggling, and he
Yeah.
obviously doesn't want to do it, but he just has to. Anyway, that's sometimes how I feel when I do videos like on reparations and stuff. Like I just should not upload this, but I have to.
Oh, that's so funny.
Anyway,
and
sorry
I'm
about
glad
that
you
tangent.
do too. All right, so prisons. I think the idea is attractive to people because if you think about it, no one really likes prisons.
Yeah,
I mean, we like it as
definitely.
a society because we think it's a solution, quote unquote, but I don't think anyone thinks it's a good solution.
Yeah.
And for many reasons. One is it detaches people from who they sinned against.
Mhm.
And two, it takes a lot of taxpayer money.
It's a ton of money,
Three,
yep.
it deserves family. I mean, destroys. It doesn't deserve them. It destroys families by taking them away. And it just kind of creates a perpetual cycle. And is there any other things that you think are like just completely wrong about prisons, or is that pretty much?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that are wrong with prison, but I think that you've kind of hit a few of the big ones. I think one of the things that that's interesting about prison is that the people that support it are like, this is a good deterrent. It's a good punishment because nobody wants to go to prison. Even the most hardened criminal doesn't want to go. People will tell you it's like hell on earth.
Mm-hmm.
But like, like that's not like a necessarily good. Like the fact that this is awful doesn't actually mean that's a good thing necessarily. You know,
right?
I mean? Anyway,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
there's a lot of things that you could talk about when you talk about prison.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think the biggest deterrent from this being a reasonable idea is, to me, the same deterrent from libertarianism, is that no one ever creates a clear path on how this could be implemented and what it means for society. We get the people that are scared of change. Well, how is justice going to be imposed? How do we determine it? Are the criminals just going to be running around on the streets?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like they already are all around the streets. Just some of them are locked up. Some of them are not.
Yeah. So
but what does that look like?
Yeah. So where I start with hopefully with everything, I try to start here with everything is basically, what does the Bible say about this? Right. So we got to go to the Bible, and if you look at the Bible, nowhere in the Old Testament, there's so much law. There's so much about justice. There's so much about penalties for crimes. But you won't find a prison sentence in the Old Testament. You will find some mention of prisons, but it's exclusively in pagan countries that have these prison sentences where the king can just throw you in the dungeon and you're just there for forever, essentially, until the king decides, like, one day he gets drunk and he's like, oh, yeah, let that guy. He was all right. You know what I mean?
Or I have a dream. Who's going to interpret this dream?
Right. So you see it in Egypt, you see it in other places. And so, that's something that I think a Christian, when you think about prison sentences, that should give you some serious pause. Like, God's law has a lot of crimes in it and a lot of punishments, and nowhere does it say, 20 years for murder. Nothing like that. And then you got to look. So I'm Reformed. So one of the things that I think is great about being Reformed is you get, these great confessions that give you a summary of the biblical teaching. And the Westminster Confession says this. It says that he's talking about the law of God. It says, besides this law, commonly called the moral law, God was pleased to give the people of Israel, as a church under age, ceremonial laws. Okay, so it gives them the ceremonial laws, basically religious duties. And then it says, also, it gives them sundry judicial laws. And then it says, which expired together with the state of that people, not obliging any other now. So basically it said that the laws, the civil laws that gave Israel, have expired. And then it says, it doesn't oblige you further than the general equity thereof may require. So basically what it's saying is, the laws that it gave to Israel, they don't oblige you any further than the general equity. So the question is, what does that mean, general equity?
I was just going to ask that.
Basically, what most people think it means is essentially the general principles, right? Essentially the morality of those laws. So we don't necessarily have to give you, we wouldn't want to replace the Constitution with the book of Deuteronomy, because that's expired. But what we can do is we can draw general principles from that law and apply them today.
Mhm.
So that's what's still there. And so if you do that and you see that nowhere in that law does it talk about prison sentences, it'd be very hard to say the general equity of that is that we should have prison sentences. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's very simple for me. Like, it's hard to make an argument that the general equity of no prison sentences is prison sentences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a great maybe place to go with like so what do we do? Like what is step one of this? And I think it's good to go to our spheres. Maybe the first place is for our churches, or maybe I don't know, maybe it's not. But I would think that the churches need to be preaching this and talking about this and informing and educating us on what it actually means to apply the Old Testament principles to today. Because from me, my evangelical background, Calvary Chapel is where I got saved, and I spent a lot of my time. I went to church every day for 3 years, no joke.
Yeah.
And I was blessed to be part of a big church that had a service every day. But we would go through the Bible verse by verse. So we'd go through these
Love
things.
Calvary Chapel.
You do love it?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Because then we were going to break up and not do another show. I'm just kidding.
my wife kind of grew up as a Christian in Calvary Chapel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so we would go through these verses but then we would be, oh, that was the Old Testament. And we would never think or talk or discuss or hear about, okay, so how do we apply this to our day? It would be more like, this is what they did and this is what happened. Mm-hmm. It'd be more like a historical Bible study or historical like lecture. But like we need more of that because the world is, I mean, our country is starving for justice. Even the world, and when I mean the world, I don't mean like the globe, but outside the church, they know that this is wrong. And what a great opportunity for the church to educate on this.
This doesn't have to be complicated either, because like, in the New Testament, because you're evangelical, so you accept the New Testament, right?
I'm warm and comfy there.
Right, you're warm and comfy there, and the New Testament talks about prisoners as if those are people we need to have compassion for, and this is Hebrews 13. This is a section that it's talking about brotherly love and having doing things that are pleasing to God, and it says this. It says, "Let brotherly love continue. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers." Okay, great. "For thereby some have entertained angels unawares." Okay, fantastic. We all know that. And then it says this: "Remember those who are in prison as though you were in prison with them." And it's like, why would it say that? Like, why would it say, remember those in prison? Like, presumably prisoners deserve to be there. Mm-hmm. So like, what's the big deal with prisoners, right? Like, okay, we can have compassion on them, I suppose, but like, I think that it's talking about this is because prison is no place for a human being. Like that's not a legitimate godly thing. If someone's in prison for stealing a loaf of bread, like they don't belong there. Mm-hmm. What a human being that stole a loaf of bread or stole a car or stole anything deserves is to basically be treated like a human. You got caught stealing. You better pay that back with mm-hmm. interest, and you're restored now. You don't have to live like a caged beast because you stole something. And so like, this is like basic Christianity. Like, remember those in prison as if you were in prison with them. Like, basically it's talking about, remember those who are being treated unjustly as if you were also being mistreated. Mm-hmm. I don't think this is like that mysterious, and this is very Christian thing to do. And good on Christians, and especially evangelicals. They do a lot of prison ministry. I just wish that they would take it a step further. Like, yes, let's preach the gospel to those in prison, but let's also talk about like, why do these places exist in the first place?
Right. And that's the thing. Like, I agree with you. Like, every church that I've ever been to has a great prison ministry. And actually there's a lot of people that get saved in them.
Big time. Yep.
But it's just like the status quo.
Right.
And that might be kind of some evidence too of just your eschatology or your end times views too. I don't know. But it might just be honestly like the ignorance of what does God want us to do today based on what he's given us in the Old Testament. Because again, I don't
think people think about it too much. And I'm not saying like they're dumb or something. Like this isn't really taught. And it's just something that, you grew up always knowing that if you were older and you committed crimes, you went to jail.
Mm-hmm.
And jails are necessary. Like jails are necessary because, you catch someone that's committed a murder, like you got to hold them somewhere for trial, and the trial needs to be quick, and speedy trial kind of thing. You can't hold them there forever, but you need a place to hold them. So jails are necessary, but prison sentences is what I'm talking about. When you get sentenced to prison.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Jails, they just are a necessary thing, but prisons, this is a big deal. And I think that the other thing is the alternative sounds icky. So here's what I mean. If someone were to rob you, Matt, of, I don't know, 20K or something like that, let's just say they stole your car or something.
I do right now, cash.
Right, right. Yeah, you keep it under your mattress. Like they went under there, stole your $20,000 in cash. Anyway, right now they get caught. They basically go to prison, and sit there for a certain amount of time, and that's that. But if they had to pay you back, what would happen? Let's just say they spent it. Let's say they, I don't know, they went to Vegas or something with your 20K and they don't have it anymore. What happens? Well, what happens is they got to pay you back somehow. Mm-hmm. And what that is essentially is a form of indentured servanthood, a form of slavery. And that to most people sounds icky. I don't think it's really that icky, because all you'd have to do is garnish someone's wages. You know what I mean? The way that we do it now with like child support and stuff. So, and I personally believe, I really do believe this, that if somebody stole 20K from you, Matt, they blew it all in Vegas, and then now they had to pay you back 40K. That's their penalty. Mm-hmm. I honestly believe that you would probably establish some kind of a relationship with this guy, because he has to give you the cash every week or whatever. And I bet you more often than not, what would happen is you'd get to know that person. He'd get to know you. He'd get to know, wow, I really stole from just like a regular person. And when they give you 20K, you'd probably be like, you know what? Don't worry about it. Mm-hmm. Got my 20K back. Good luck, man. I know you got a family. I know you got kids to feed. You're all messed up on drugs. Let's get you clean, but you don't have to pay me 40. Yeah. I bet you that would happen so often, but now that's not even an option. They get thrown in jail for 2 years, and basically they're there with a bunch of other criminals that are all angry and frustrated, and they're being treated like beasts. And so they're just trying to survive. And I don't know if you've ever seen prison shows and figure out what happens there. It's awful. Yeah. And so they get out of there. And so often we understand that this is, how many people that get released from prison end up back there in a few years or a few months. It's just, you know what I mean? So like, they're not learning their lessons. It isn't working. Some people say there's even a movie, I forget what movie it is, like where he say, I went into jail, because I sold, marijuana. I came out learning how to sell cocaine. You know what I mean? Like, but there were a bunch of criminals, like it doesn't make any sense. Honestly, when you really break it down, it makes no sense.
No, it doesn't. I was thinking, like, when you're a kid, your parents like, don't hang out with the bad people. But then when you're an adult and you get thrown in prison, they're like, just go hang out with these bad people for 5 years. And it's like the exact opposite.
Honestly, it's the exact opposite. When you just sit and think about it for just a few moments, it's like, this doesn't really make much sense. But it's like, almost like, what else do we do though? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that is where we have a great opportunity to establish the validity of the Bible and a lot of the culture that's desperate for it. Because again, like zooming out big picture, like just don't be thinking about the individuals. Look at the fruit of this prison system.
This doesn't work.
It doesn't work. It's a failure, because we talk about the individual that's in prison and the victim, but then the families that have to cope with this and deal with this too, without their husband, most likely statistically, right? Or without the man of the house, if they're not married. And what do those kids learn? And what do those kids have to do? And what do those moms do? Well, they go get 2 jobs. They leave the kids out. And it just creates this like snowball effect. And that is where like just disaster happens on a culture.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. One thing I'd recommend, and this this could be dangerous, but go on YouTube and search for people who have channels that used to be in prison, and there's a lot of really good content out there of people who are hilarious, and they tell how it is kind of thing, and there's even some Christians out there that do this, that talk about their experiences in prison, and they oftentimes they'll have a sense of humor about it, but like you can tell that it's not a joke to them. Like it was awful.
Mm-hmm.
It was awful. And they've seen some horrible things. And, I mean, some of the people that are in prison, like they shouldn't be alive because they've done horrible crimes where they should have been executed. And then you mix those people up with people that are in there for selling dope that really aren't hardened criminals. You put those in there with people that have stolen, and it's just like, this is not an environment for people. It just really isn't. And honestly, this whole topic came from because Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was being ridiculed for saying we should abolish prisons. And I got to be honest, like I really don't like AOC very much, but I agree with her.
Even though she's your sister?
She's my Boricua sister. I'm sure we've got some bloodlines, connected back there. But like, I kind of agree with her. I think we should probably abolish prisons. I don't think that she would like very much what I would want to replace it with. But
right.
I think she's right. I think that even if she's exaggerating about the conditions of people having to drink out of toilets and stuff, which I think she probably is.
Oh, well, you know what that was, right? Those facilities have a drinking fountain on top. And then the toilets on the bottom because there's one spout that runs from the wall.
Well, also, let's just be honest. Like a lot of people drink out of the toilets in prison because that's where you hide the hooch.
Yeah. Touche. I would really like to see like some practical steps. Like, I would like the Christian community, maybe a denomination or something, or maybe this show. I don't want to do the homework, but maybe I should. Like come up with like, okay, so what does that look like? What do we do with existing prisoners? What do we do with future prisoners? And how do we like phase this transition out? And I think, again, like a lot of the libertarian principles of let's have privatized roads. Well, like, how do you get to that? And it's just so detached from reality and no stepping stones to get there that it's just not going to work. But I think that this thing.
That's my solution. Ask Marcus. He knows.
Okay. We'll do that after the show. We'll tag him and be like, hey, can you write out this plan for us? Because I think it's a no-brainer when we start thinking about it and we start looking at it. And if we can say like, hey, the Bible told you so all along.
Yep.
I mean, that could be some great ministry opportunities for us to preach the gospel.
Well, I completely agree. And I would say this, you're right. Like it seems so far-fetched because there's so many steps that you need to take to get from here to there. But if it's going to, if this kind of conversation is going to start anywhere, it has to start in the church, I would say. And right now, to be honest, like anyone who's even bringing this kind of stuff up is ostracized as, you're one of those theonomists, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like, well, we kind of have to start talking about it in order to even get to the first step. Because I agree, you couldn't just like unleash the prisoners on the population. You know what I mean? Like just because we know for a fact that the math doesn't work with Social Security doesn't mean we should abolish it tomorrow, because there are people that have paid into this system for so long that it would be very unfair and would not work for those people.
Yeah.
But you have to start talking about it because the mathematical realities are realities. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like, we can't just release prisoners. This isn't Syria.
Didn't they do that in one of the Batman movies too? Like, just released a bunch of like, it was
Bane, wasn't it? Bane that had the island.
Yeah. Arkham Asylum. Maybe it was just the asylum that I don't know what happened, but
yeah, that was good. But so the churches need to talk about this stuff, and they're going to get ostracized. We're going to get ostracized. We're not going to get retweeted for the show for this, but it's okay because we shouldn't be fearing man. We should be fearing God. And if you just get that right, you're going to be able to be a lot more effective in this life. And also going to the other spheres is with your family. We should be talking about these things and what justice actually looks like and where do we get it from. And then also, again, in ourselves and personally, we need to be praying that God shows us what that means, what that looks like, and how do we carry it out in our own lives and with our neighbors and with the people that we have relationships with too. Because we shouldn't just be establishing justice based on what the government says.
Right. Yeah, that's such a good point. And actually, I was about to record a video today that I had to put on hold about this exact thing because, like, I often will get the question, "What do we do about this?" And it's like you have to. It's like basically what they're asking is like, "What do we do about these 100 problems, these huge, humongous problems that we have?" And it's like the first thing that you do is not try to solve 100 problems at once. Like you have to focus on smaller things that you can actually control. Like I can't control the fact that CNN, is fake news and puts, war footage of Syria that actually happened in Kentucky. I can't do anything about that. You know what I mean?
Right.
But what I can do is we've talked about the sphere so many times, and we've only done 2 episodes, but we've talked about it so many times. Like what I can do is run my family and have a relationship with my wife and my kids according to God's principles. I can do that. Yeah. And that doesn't sound very flashy, but it actually is the plan. And that's what actually will eventually, over time, stop CNN from putting Syria war footage that actually happened in Kentucky.
Yeah. And I was just going to say the same thing. Like, it doesn't seem sexy. It doesn't seem like it's going to be effective, but it will be in the long run. And that's how God works. God is a very patient God, and his plans are played out over centuries, it seems, not in flashpoint, news cycles.
Yeah.
Because especially when you consider, and this should be encouraging for us Christians, is the left is so crazy now, and the world is so crazy, is they're scared to have children because of the end of the world. They don't want to have kids. And we see this played out in statistics, right? Religious people have more kids. So if we just become faithful to our families and preach the gospel, preach truth, preach justice, and all of these things, if we do that, it's going to work. The plan will work. We just got to keep sending them to government schools where we lose them or get stolen from us. But if we are faithful and we take ownership of educating and teaching our families, we win.
Yeah, man. And let me just say this. What you just said was great. I don't want to distract from it. But what I will say is we're on the same page. I was going to actually say it doesn't sound sexy, but then I figured this is a Christian show, so I can't use that word.
Yeah, no.
So I said,
need to take sex back. We need to bring sexy back.
That's right. That's so funny because I really was going to say that, and I just changed it at the last second. And then I was like, man, I should have. That's exactly what I was thinking.
That's so great. All right. On that note, we should
before we end it. Okay. One of the on that same word. I don't know if you've ever seen like those what are they like those restaurant makeover shows? You know what I'm talking about? Like
I know the makeover shows.
Yeah, like Gordon Ramsay does one, Kitchen Nightmares. Anyway, this is one of my biggest pet peeves when someone will say they're making a dish and they're making some food and they're like, "Oh, that looks sexy." Calling food sexy, that's gross. That's weird and gross.
Yeah.
So sorry to interrupt you, ending the show, but I just had to say that. That's one of my pet peeves. I don't like that.
Yeah, that is. Sex is belonging in one place between a man and woman in marriage.
Not on a dish.
Not on a dish. Oh my goodness. But seriously, that's another thing we should talk about more is sex, because like we need to stop being embarrassed about it and stop thinking that it's something we can't talk about. That is ours. God gave it to us to enjoy and to be part of the battle plan of having families.
Yeah, I know, but like, food is not part of it though. No,
I don't know.
Anyway, on that note, I think the show has to be over.
It has to be over. Well, I have to say, I had a great time with all of you who joined us. We had some great side conversations about firearms. If you are listening to the show on YouTube or on a podcast, come join us. Be part of the conversation, the live show. We'd love to hear from you. 8:30 p.m. Eastern time on Patreon, Crowdcast, and you will be supporting us and helping us as we are, fighting the good fight. And with that, we will talk to you next time. God bless.
Take care.